Welcome back. As you know, we film on Thursdays and upload our episodes on Tuesday. Last week, after we filmed our episode, Great Britain decided to leave the EU in a referendum vote. This has caused shockwaves throughout the world and probably was the biggest piece of news to hit us in spite of the election campaign and all of the machinations going on with the Tokyo governor position. Michael, Brexit, how is this hitting you?
Brexit is hitting me in that a lot of people suddenly asked me, what's your comment? What's the Japanese view? And I say, well, there are the obvious things. There are a lot of Japanese companies that established their offices and factories inside the United Kingdom with the expressed understanding that it was going to stay in the EU, and it would be a base that would be the easiest for them to have that entry point. Well, that investment, particularly in automobiles, is now in question. And certainly for large corporations like Hitachi, which has been providing the United Kingdom with high-speed rail, their plan, of course, was to sell high-speed rail all the way through the continent. That's also now in question, and now they're thinking about what is their position. The obvious first thing that happened, of course, was that the yen shot through the roof as investors around the world sought some kind of refuge from the currency collapses and the market collapses that happened as a result of
totally
the Brexit.
Unexpected, wasn't it?
Well, it wasn't unexpected. You could predict that it would that there would be some kind of movement, but nevertheless, the idea was, or the general feeling was, that when push came to shove, the British would be sensible. They would come out and say, well, that was a great deal of fun, but we're staying in. and they didn't.
No, and there's no do-over.
There is, and the entire world, of course, suddenly had to react to a concept that was much like the Trump presidency. Something you don't want to think about, and nevertheless should. In this case, Brexit has come up and slammed this country's economy, particularly in this very, very delicate period. Mr. Abe is now having to explain how his government is going to be counteracting the effects of this Brexit referendum.
And they're storehousing some cash, making sure that the money will be available for these
the liquidity
companies.
will be available for Japanese financial firms, everything. Yeah, and that's just basic housekeeping. But beyond that, the basic fundamental core of Abenomics, if it still deserves to be called that term, is the devaluation of the yen. And the hopes that all kinds of good things would happen out of that. There would be the birth of inflation, that there would be economic growth, that there would be all kinds of things tumbling out of the basic flooding of the market by the Bank of Japan with cash, with the availability of funds. This would have an initial effect upon Japanese corporate profits because with the exchange rate change, they would be able to declare their foreign profits as being worth far more in terms of yen, and it all looks beautiful and starts a virtuous cycle. Well, the cycle has never established itself in terms of wages. It's nowhere near where it needs to be in terms of prices, and everything has come to a complete halt, and then this happens.
This was done through a popular referendum, and it looks like maybe referendums are not really the way we should go, and the Japanese are also confronting a potential referendum vote if, in fact, the Abe administration is successful in capturing 2/3 of the upper house. It already has 2/3 of the lower house, and forcing a referendum on the revision of the Japanese constitution.
Yeah, the referendums do not exist on a national scale. They do exist in local scales, but they're non-binding in the Japanese case. Unlike the vote that happened in the UK, they really are merely expressions of opinion. They have no force at all. Many local governments, however, allow them in order to judge what the voters like, and many of them have indeed adopted the changes that have been demanded when those referendums have delivered a significant message. We want things to go this way. But normally here in Japan, referendums are an alien thing. They're not something that has any basis in law. There is now, however, a law for a referendum on the Constitution. That was something that did not exist before Mr. Abe himself And when he was the first time in the Prime Minister, he actually put that law into place. Before his first term, there wasn't even a method of having this national referendum. Now we have that law. All we need now is the 2/3 in the House of Councilors.
Right, and then it goes for a referendum, 50% votes. We want to revise the Constitution according to the recommendations that have been provided to us, or we don't.
And the thing is, with the result of Brexit, which has this very close vote, and where everybody was thinking, oh, it'll just be business as usual, status quo, and the status quo was overturned, that's going to have an interesting message to some people regarding the advisability of a referendum on the Constitution.
Well, you remember, Michael, when the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister were in Sendai meeting with the G7 leaders, the Prime Minister said, you need to help us because there is a financial collapse that is it's a calamity just approaching us, so you need to support our policies. And we talked about this briefly, and everybody just kind of ignored him and was very polite and changed the subject. But in fact, this exit from the EU has triggered a calamity of the scale that we enjoyed under Lehman shock.
Yes. Abe Shinzo, market guru.
Yes.
Who would have ever thought that?
Who would have ever thought that?
But inadvertently, he was absolutely right.
Right.
It wasn't for the reasons that he said. He was looking at commodities prices. But yeah, the requests that he was making regarding various policy changes now make complete sense in light of what has happened in regards to Brexit.
So the Prime Minister had a window of opportunity to close the lower house at the same time that the upper house is going for election. Anyway, he missed that window of opportunity. He went through G7, Obama's great speech at Hiroshima, and then he canceled the imposition of the consumption tax, and now we are in the election campaigning of the upper house only.
Yeah, and he did miss an opportunity there, and part of that was due to that rejection that he received for this trial balloon that he set up. There's going to be a financial crisis. Well, it was a missed opportunity for him, but then again, in terms of what we've been looking at the House of Councilors level, it's going to be a pretty interesting election there, and might even be a little bit tougher than people imagine.
The upper house election, you're saying?
Yes, that's right. So the House of Councilors election is work enough for Mr. Abe and company.
Right. As a consequence of the exit from the EU, that's going to have a negative effect on the Abe administration?
It might require the Abe administration to make some extra excuses about, or give some extra explanations why Abenomics isn't working. But the DP and the four-party coalition's message, Abenomics isn't working, hasn't seemingly ignited voter rage or anger against the LDP. The numbers in the polls have not budged. So Brexit, I don't think it's going to matter much either.
Stay tuned. We'll see if Brexit has an impact on the upper house elections.